She once said, "If one day I disappear, look down at the river, not because I jumped, but because that's where the truth is hidden." Dominique Wells vanished on a sweltering July morning just before the sun had fully risen, and the last drops of dew still clung to the pavement along Usosadi. She was seen walking along the shoulder of Vatifao, the highway. Someone reported seeing a flickering flashlight around 3 a.m., more than 5 miles from the scene. But when search teams arrived, all they found was a faint footprint pressed into the wet sand. No screams, no cameras, no other signs. Dominique vanished as if she had never existed. 7 years passed in silence until a student accidentally pulled a ring from the depths of a lake. Her name was engraved on it. The spot, over 80 miles from where she was, last seen. That's when her family knew someone was still hiding the truth. And Dominique, though she never came home, was speaking out in her own way. You're watching Hidden Echoes, where even the quietest voices are heard. Dominique Wells was born and raised in Selma, Alabama, a small town layered with pride and pain, where history still lingers in every corner. She was the second of 3 daughters in a working-class family. Her mother was a nurse, her father a carpenter. From a young age, Dominique learned how to stay strong in silence, a trait everyone would later recall when speaking of her. After her mother died suddenly from a stroke, Dominique stepped into the role of the Sote's eldest. She cared for her sisters, worked part-time after school, and despite her busy life, never missed her early morning runs across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the very path her mother once walked every day to work. "Kietsi, how I remember her," Dominique once said, by running through the place she once called routine at 25. Dominique was an emergency room nurse at a community hospital in Montgomery, a job that demanded both strength and heart. She wasn't wealthy, but there was something striking about her, honest, humble, full of quiet energy. She wore her blue scrubs like armor, listened to podcasts during her runs, and loved photographing trees after the rain. Skincare was her escape. Sometimes, even after a grueling night shift, she'd teach her younger sisters how to make natural face masks. These small rituals were her way of staying grounded in a world that often felt too loud. Her husband, Marcus Wells, worked in gas pipeline construction. His job kept him away from home for long stretches, and most of their communication came through texts or notes stuck to the fridge. They married in 2014 after meeting in college. Friends often said they were opposites. Dominique was rooted. Marcus was restless and somewhat introverted, but they shared a common value. They worked not for status, but for their families and their communities. Neighbors described Dominique as morning, sunlight, gentle, kind, and always ready with a smile. She organized free health clinics for the elderly and helped raise money for local school libraries. But what people remembered most was her gaze, calm and bright, as if she saw something beautiful beneath the surface of everyday life. About a week before Dominique disappeared, her younger sister Layla noticed something was off. Not anxious, but disconnected. She'd smile when I asked her something, Layla recalled, but her eyes were far away, like she was talking to someone else, not me. In her journal, Layla later wrote, "Dom said she was fine, but I felt it, like hearing a tree branch snap in the forest, just before the wind picks up." Dominique rarely complained. She was always the one lifting others up. But her coworkers remembered that during her last 2 shifts, she left early, saying she had an unusual headache. That was unlike her. Dominique usually stayed late if anyone else called out. On Monday, she even called one of her older patients, Ms. Eleanor, just to remind her to take her blood pressure meds. That wasn't strange. What stood out was when Miss Eleanor asked, "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Dominique paused for a long moment before saying, "I'm just tired. There's some things I need to work through." On Wednesday, 2 days before she vanished, Dominique stopped by the local pharmacy to pick up skincare items and vitamins. The security cameras weren't working, but the owner, Mr. Jones, remembered her clearly. She stood at the counter for a long time, like she was waiting for someone, or thinking about something heavy. She also bought a small notebook and a black ink, pen, things she didn't usually use. That final night, according to neighbors, Dominique came home around midnight. One person saw the kitchen light on until nearly 1 a.m. There were no sounds of fighting, no unusual noises, just that kitchen light on for a long time and then off. The next morning, she didn't show up for her 7 a.m. shift. When the first caller, an 11-year-old boy with asthma, didn't get his usual response from Dominique, he called the hospital. Within hours, she was listed as absent without explanation. But as those who knew her said, if Dominique didn't show up for work, something had to be wrong. There's no other explanation. And they were right. Friday, July 14th, 2016. Dominique woke up early, just like always. She made coffee, typed a few lines on her laptop, and wrote down 6 tasks in her brand new notebook. Around 5:15 a.m., a neighbor heard a car door close. Her blue sedan started up and drove off down the quiet street. A few minutes later, security footage from a gas station 3 miles away captured a woman. Matching Dominique's appearance, she filled up with a small amount of gas, then turned toward US 80. Nothing seemed off, except her eyes. They looked swollen, a bit red, like she hadn't slept much, or had spent the night deep in thought. After that, Dominique seemed to vanish into thin air. By 8:30 a.m., her hospital had reported her missing. Her husband Marcus, who was in Birmingham at the time reportedly meeting a contractor, hadn't heard from her since the night before. Layla called dozens of times. No answer. Finally, at 10:45 a.m., the local police officially registered Dominique Wells as a missing person. An hour later, a park ranger named Harris, doing a routine patrol along a remote forest route off US 80, spotted a car parked oddly near an unmarked trailhead, usually known only to hunters or locals. It was Dominique's blue sedan. The doors were unlocked. Inside, police found her phone, battery still, over 60%, no recent calls, a light jacket, a half-finished bottle of water, and the to-do list, all 6 items, crossed out, sat on the passenger seat. One detail stood out. Her expensive sunglasses, which she always wore outside, were folded neatly on the dashboard. No signs of struggle, no blood, nothing visibly suspicious. But the scene was too tidy, unnervingly tidy. Dominique was neat, yes, but not obsessively. So, her phone was still open to the Notes app, but there were no new entries. Investigators first assumed she had walked into the nearby woods, maybe for a break, maybe just to clear her mind. But only one set of footprints was ever found, a single step. Then, nothing. The area was cordoned off and searched within 24 hours. But nothing turned up, just dry trees, the flutter of birds overhead, and a strange, aching silence. One search team member later said, "We called her name over and over, but out there, it was like nothing echoed." Back immediately after Dominique was reported missing, the Dallas County Sheriff's Office formed a rapid response team. Lieutenant Raul Spencer, a veteran with 15 years of experience handling adult disappearances, was assigned as the field coordinator. He began by collecting initial witness statements and mapping out search routes along the side roads leading into the forest. Within the first 12 hours, 20 police officers, 15 volunteers, and 2 K9 units combed the area around where Dominique's car was found, expanding outward in a 5-mile radius. All they found were scattered traces, a faint indentation on moss, a snapped branch, a few short black hairs stuck in grass. None could be confirmed as connected, but none could be ruled out either. One detail stood out: Dominique's phone. Forensics showed the GPS app was off, but one small clue emerged. The calculator app had been opened at 6:41 a.m., roughly 90 minutes, after she was believed to have left home. No data was entered. No calls were made. But that tap on the screen proved someone, possibly Dominique, used the phone at that time, which meant she hadn't disappeared right away. She had been somewhere alive, at least until 6:40. Meanwhile, her husband Marcus returned from Birmingham and joined the search efforts. He handed out flyers, posted notices on local Facebook groups, and helped Layla plaster missing posters along US 80. But not everyone believed he was uninvolved. Some neighbors mentioned recent financial tension between the couple. One elderly woman who lived 3 houses down claimed she heard a car engine start just before midnight the night Dominique vanished. The direction was unclear, and her account couldn't be verified, but it added pressure to an already tense investigation. After 3 fruitless days, the search expanded. Rescue teams used drones, kayaks to scan riverbanks, and even requested commercial satellite imagery. But nature turned against them, heavy rains on Dutch. The 4th day made the area slippery, washing away possible evidence. At the first press briefing, Lieutenant Spencer said, "We're not ruling anything out. But what we do know is she left that morning with intent and then didn't come back." Spencer had been leading the case since day 1. Over 15 years, he'd handled more than 20 missing persons cases, but Dominique's disappearance, he admitted, felt off-pattern. During that same briefing, he said, "She's not the kind of person who vanishes at random. Everything points to intention, to purpose, and no one in her family believes she ran away." After reanalyzing the scene, the sales team noticed something strange. Dominique's phone wasn't in her bag or the front seat, it was in the glove compartment with the notes app open. On the screen was a to-do list with 6 items. 5 had been crossed off. The last read, "Go to Crescent Lake." But no, one in her family knew what she planned to do there. In fact, Dominique had never even mentioned that place before. That note sparked a new theory. Maybe she had arranged to meet someone at Crescent Lake. But the lake was over 50 miles from the site. It wasn't somewhere she could have walked to. Police checked Dominique's recent call records and found a few calls to unfamiliar numbers with area codes from Lee County, home to an old, now-defunct campsite. When investigators followed the lead, the hut number had already been disconnected. The last registered owner was a man from Georgia who'd been deceased since 2015. Search teams widened their efforts, sweeping the woods outward in circles. A trained scent dog picked up a human trail, roughly 3 miles from where the car was, found along a rarely used footpath, but the trail ended abruptly at a clearing, as if someone had gotten into a vehicle or been taken. News of Dominique's disappearance spread fast, drawing statewide media attention. Local journalists began questioning the investigation. Why hadn't suspicious license plates been released? Why was there no federal collaboration? Lieutenant Spencer remained silent, but behind the scenes, tensions were rising. One junior officer speaking Wetzel anonymously revealed, "Not everyone agrees. This was a standard missing person case." That same night, a man called the tip line. He refused to give his name, but claimed he saw a woman matching Dominique's description at a Monroe County rest stop the morning she vanished. She was walking fast, like someone was following her. But when I turned my car around to check, they were both gone. Police searched the area. Nothing. Still, that report, though unconfirmed, planted a seed. Dominique wasn't alone that morning. And if someone had been trailing her, they were careful, methodical. They left no trace. 1 week later, the investigation entered what experts call the fog zone, where every lead is blurry and every theory has cracks. Spencer authorized expanding the search to include rest areas, abandoned cabins, and hidden trails along the Tallapoosa Aqueduct system. Out of dozens of locations, only one stopped. The team in their tracks, a rotting wooden shack that once served as a pilgrim stopover. Years ago, on the weathered floorboards, a team member noticed a shallow circular dent like the kind a ring might leave when dropped. Nearby, stuck to the edge of an old window frame, was a single strand of short, curly hair. The samples were sent for testing. Results confirmed it belonged to a woman of African descent, but without a complete DNA profile. It couldn't be matched to Dominique. Still, just the possibility was enough to break Layla's composure at the station. Even if it's just a theory, she said, it's the first thing that's felt real after 2 weeks, of nothing but questions. The case began, drawing the attention of independent, investigative journalists. One article in Southern Silence quoted an anonymous rescue worker he believed Dominique may have met someone she knew that morning. His reason? Her car showed no signs of forced entry. Her wallet was untouched in the trunk, but her ring was gone. In the ER world, Dominique used to joke, if I take off my ring, it means I'm about to get serious. That comment sparked a new line of thinking. What if she took the ring off? Not for comfort, not for work, but because she feared it might be stolen, or worse, because someone she trusted had hurt her. There were no answers. But 48 hours later, the police received an anonymous letter, typed on a computer, sent by mail. No fingerprints. It contained only one sentence. She didn't run. She was stopped. A simple phrase, but it cut straight to the core. Dominique, someone always moving, had been made to stop. And whoever did it was still silent. 3 weeks after Dominique went missing, the atmosphere at the police department had shifted. What began as tense hope had quietly curdled into doubt. Lieutenant Raoul Spencer started re-examining every statement from the beginning, this time with a sharper lens. He wasn't looking for facts anymore. He was searching for cracks, small inconsistencies in what once seemed like harmless words. The first person he brought in was Rashad Green, Dominique's close friend, hospital co-worker, and the last person known to have spoken to her the night before she vanished. Rashad said they'd talked for about 12 minutes, mostly about Dominique completing an online course to upgrade her nursing license. She sounded happy, like things were finally falling into place, he told Spencer. But when Spencer pulled the phone records, the call lasted only 4 minutes and 37 seconds. When asked again, Rashad paused, then said, maybe I remembered. Wrong. I've been playing it back in my head, but maybe it wasn't as long as I thought. There was another detail investigators flagged. Rashad had once been suspended for 3 days, following an altercation with a male patient with a criminal record. Dominique had been the only one to defend him, even writing a letter to the board on his behalf. Their friendship was so close, rumors spread, that they had once dated, rumors both denied. But when asked a third time in the interrogation room whether anything ever happened between them, Rashad finally said, I think I wanted it to, but she didn't. Meanwhile, another discrepancy emerged. Andrea, a nurse in the ER, had told investigators that the day before Dominique disappeared, she seemed rushed, asking to borrow a paper map of Selma, specifically the area around Crescent Lake. But when Spencer asked Layla, she insisted Dominique never used paper maps. She always used GPS apps. In fact, she once joked that Andrea was living in the Stone Age for still using printed maps. A paper map seemed trivial, but when placed alongside everything else, the to-do list, the final destination left unfulfilled, it became a puzzle piece that tilted the whole board. At the same time, Spencer ordered a review of the unidentified vehicle caught in a blurry frame from gas station footage. The result, just a few months prior, a similar pickup truck had been reported in a harassment case involving a woman near Wilson Park, where Dominique often jogged. The driver had never been caught, but the description remained: a white male, around 40, shaved head, with a tattoo on his left wrist. The investigation expanded into Monroe County. A woman named Christine confirmed she'd been followed by a man matching that description back in March. But when Spencer asked if she could identify him, Christine shook her head. I've tried to forget that face. Just as the investigation felt like it was circling the drain, someone unexpected stepped forward, Marvin Lee, 68 years old, who lived just 2 doors down from Dominique. He walked into the station one Tuesday morning with a small notebook and a single statement that made Spencer drop everything. He was doing, I think I heard her, that night. Mr. Marvin, a retired physics teacher, lived alone after his wife passed. He didn't know Dominique well, just exchanged greetings when she came home late from work. But in his statement, he said that around 1:00 a.m. on the night Dominique disappeared, while fixing an old speaker on his porch, he heard the screech of tires outside, followed by a woman's voice. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. She said, "No, I told you no." Then a car door slammed. And then nothing. Marvin had never mentioned it before. He didn't realize it. Might matter. He hadn't known Dominique was missing until his niece in Birmingham called him about the news. I don't watch much TV, and at my age, you tend to mind your own business. But if that was her voice, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Spencer logged the statement and asked tech teams to review phone activity in the neighborhood between midnight and 2 a.m. Most devices showed no anomalies, but Marvin shared something else. In the weeks leading up to the disappearance, he'd seen a silver pickup truck parked backward at Tahet, the corner across the street, no front license plate. That truck didn't belong here, and it wasn't parked like someone visiting. It was waiting. Almost simultaneously, investigators received a second anonymous letter. This one was handwritten in slanted script, purple ink. It read only, "Don't look west." She never left the east. Police considered it a cruel prank. But Spencer didn't dismiss the possibility that it came from someone who knew more, or someone playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse. To test the theory, search teams reopened the eastern area around Crescent Lake, previously ruled out due to timing assumptions. They found nothing, no footprints, no fabric, no signs of anyone ever being there, just the brittle crackle of insects underfoot and the smell of damp forest after rain. But one officer, Kiara, a young patrol woman, who had led the eastern search, said something that stuck with Spencer. "It's not that I saw anything wrong," she said. "It's that I didn't see anything. It felt intentionally empty." Then in week 4, a new figure entered the story, Malcolm, Reed, Dominique's ex from college. They had dated for nearly 2 years before, parting amicably when Dominique moved back to Alabama after her mother's passing. Malcolm now lived in Atlanta, worked in tech, and hadn't spoken to Dominique in nearly 3 years. So why did he show up? "Because I saw the missing poster on Reddit," he told detectives. "And because there's something no one else would know except me." He pulled an old photo from his pocket. In it, Dominique is beaming, holding up a silver ring engraved with the initials DW and the phrase, "You ran this far, keep going." It was the same ring found in the lake, 80 miles from where she vanished. I had that ring made," Malcolm said, "in 2015. It was a goodbye gift." The revelation stunned the team. Dominique's family had always believed the ring was a birthday present from her father. No one had known it came from Malcolm. That changed everything. It raised a chilling question. Had someone who knew about that ring kept it for years, only to place it in the lake? Like a message? Spencer asked Malcolm where he was the day Dominique disappeared. He confirmed he was in Atlanta, more than 200 miles away, with multiple alibis and security footage to back it up. But one moment stuck with Spencer. When asked, "Do you think Dominique would have kept that ring all these years?" Malcolm didn't hesitate. "Yes, she would never let it go. I know she wouldn't." Days later, Officer Kiara examined the ring again and found something strange. A tiny scratch along the inner band, like it had scraped against metal. Under a magnifying glass, it revealed a jagged groove, not a gentle slide, but a forced twist. Someone hadn't just taken off the ring. They'd pried it off. When Layla saw the report, she said just one thing: "My sister would never take that ring off unless someone made her." Conflicting stories, vague witnesses, unconfirmed truths, but all of it now orbiting one central object, that ring. It wasn't just the last thing left of Dominique. It might be the first sign that she fought back. And if she did, if that ring was left as a trace for someone to find. Could it mean she still hoped to be found? In the second month, after Dominique vanished, just as media coverage began shifting to newer stories and her family teetered on the edge of exhaustion, an unexpected phone call shifted the investigation's trajectory. The caller was Jamal Sutton, 31, a security guard at the Oak Ridge Wildlife Reserve, located roughly 90 miles southeast of where Dominique's car was found. He was also a former student in a youth health education program Dominique had volunteered with during the summer of 2014. She was the first person who ever told me there's no shame in starting over, Jamal said during questioning. Jamal recalled seeing a silver pickup truck stop outside the reserve gates just after dusk, about a week before Dominique went missing. The driver was a stocky white man with a shaved head and a large black tattoo stretching from his wrist to his upper arm. Jamal couldn't make out his face clearly, but he remembered what the man asked. Do people jog here at sunrise? Jamal replied that some hikers passed through occasionally, but joggers were rare. The man paused, silent for several seconds, then turned his vehicle around and left, without another word. That detail sent a ripple through the case. Police immediately re-examined prior reports of a man stalking women near Wilson Park. The same truck, same tattoo. Within a week, they identified the man, Troy Delaney, 43, previously arrested for harassment and trespassing. No fixed address. A drifter. Troy's record revealed a deeply unstable history, multiple aliases, interstate movement, living out of his vehicle. He'd even been investigated, but never charged in a 2011 Tennessee missing persons case. The victim, a young black woman named Janelle Pierce, 26, who vanished while hiking alone in the Smoky Mountains. She left her phone, wallet, and a backpack, carrying only a book and a water bottle. Like Dominique, she disappeared without a trace. And like Dominique, the only thing never recovered was a silver ring. At the time, Troy had been arrested for illegally camping in the same forest area. He was released for lack of evidence. But now, Spencer saw a disturbing pattern, independent. Black women, athletic, with a habit of running alone in isolated nature, and always a missing piece of personal jewelry. Spencer obtained a warrant to search Troy's truck. No blood, no hair, no belongings of Dominique's were found. But something else stood out. Inside the glove compartment was an old, canvas-bound notebook. On the cover, scrawled in red ink, were the words, "Freedom is never letting anyone know you existed." Inside were scattered journal entries documenting a nomadic path through various states, each entry dated only by geography, not time. One page read, "She was the first one who looked at me and wasn't afraid." She smiled. "But I couldn't let that happen again." Another, "Running fast doesn't mean you get away. No names, no details." But the tone was chilling. Meanwhile, Layla, Dominique's sister, couldn't let go of her gut feeling about someone else, Rashad Green. She couldn't forget the way he looked at the photo of Dominique's ring. He stared too long, she told a journalist, like he was trying to remember or trying to forget. She secretly met with an independent reporter and shared the discrepancy in the phone call. Duration. The next day, the headline read, "Time, discrepancy, and the questions no one's asked." Police had no choice but to bring Rashad back in, this time with a lawyer present. Now, the investigation was splitting into two directions, an external threat in Troy, Delaney, and a personal link in Rashad's Green. Both had holes. Both had hidden layers. And then came the email. It was anonymous. The subject line, "Wrong direction." Attached, a single photo. Blurry, but enough to shake the entire department. A woman jogging at dusk, viewed from behind, her silhouette backlit by sunset. And on her wrist, a string band holding a silver ring that matched Dominique's. The photo had been taken with an older, digital camera, no GPS data. The location couldn't be verified, but the landscape, sparse woods, red dirt trail, twilight sky matched a stretch of land between Monroe and Randolph counties 60 miles south of where Dominique went, missing. What rattled the investigators wasn't just the setting, it was the posture. The runner's stride leaned forward, arms close, hands clenched, an exact match for Dominique's running style. Family and friends often said, you could spot her from a mile away. Spencer called a closed-door meeting. For the first time, both leads were laid out, side by side. Troy Delaney, with a troubling history and the makings of a predator. Rashad Green, emotionally entangled, inconsistent in his statements, and visibly shaken. Neither was a perfect suspect. Neither could be ruled out. When Spencer showed Rashad the photo, Rashad denied knowing anything, but his face changed. He blinked rapidly, breathed hard, as if holding something back. Layla, watching from the corner, turned away, her face clouded with disappointment. But just as Rashad was about to leave, paused, then asked Spencer quietly, what if I told you I once saw someone with Dominique? Someone she told me not to mention. Would it be too late now? Before Spencer could respond, Rashad shook his head. Never mind. I might be remembering wrong. That same night, Troy Delaney, now referred to by locals as the Highway Shadow, suddenly disappeared. From Alabama, his truck was caught briefly on a traffic cam. In Georgia, then it vanished. A federal warrant was issued. But Troy was gone. Again. And the photo? Still no confirmation it was. Dominique. No face. No date. Just a haunting glimpse, like a ghost running toward a horizon no one could reach. Amid the spiral of suspicion and silence, truth became clear. The answer wasn't hiding in a name. It was buried in the gaps, in fractured memories, broken loyalties, and the things one dared to say. Not the man who once loved Dominique. Not the friend who claimed to protect her. Not the shadow who might have followed her. The darkness surrounding Dominique didn't come from one direction. It came from all sides, and each side held someone still choosing silence. 3 months after Dominique disappeared, the case was quietly marked status unknown and placed in cold file. The federal warrant for Troy Delaney remained active, but led nowhere. Rashad Green left the hospital, moved back, in with family in Mobile, and withdrew from public view. The public, once vocal, had grown divided. Some believed Troy was a dangerous predator. Others suspected Rashad was hiding something. But most people had grown tired because no one knew what to believe anymore. Lila, Dominique's younger sister, hadn't given up. Alone, she began gathering every clue, every timeline. She built a digital map of Dominique's final known movements, layering it with sightings, theories, and even the anonymous photo. One late night, she returned to the email, titled Wrong Direction. Instead of flipping the image geometrically, she inverted its light values, adjusted the contrast. That's when something emerged. In the lower corner, faint, nearly invisible, a road sign. It read, Sinks Bend Trailhead. Almost no one had noticed it. But when Layla checked the map, she found the trailhead lay outside the previously searched perimeter, too far from the original scene to seem relevant at the time. She took the finding to Lieutenant Spencer, who had retired just a week earlier. When she said the words Sinks Bend, he paused and said only 3 words, should have gone sooner. Spencer contacted the department and recommended reopening the search. Within 3 days, a small task force reached Sinks Bend. Everything appeared undisturbed until they noticed a narrow crack between 2 boulders. Inside was a plastic container wrapped in aged plastic. It had been buried, then retrieved, then buried again. Inside, they found a single item, a wooden pendant, Dominique's old college necklace, etched with 2 words, be still. Her family identified it instantly. Dominique never took it off, except for showers. And since college, she only wore it during moments she needed peace. Why was it there? Who put it there? And most important, why was there nothing else? The questions returned with force. Had Dominique been there, alive? Was she held there? Or was this her final trace placed with intention? The necklace held no DNA, no fingerprints. But as Layla said, Presence doesn't always need proof. Sometimes it's just a feeling you can't explain, but you know she was here. News of Psycho. The necklace spread quickly. Though it was the first physical trace in Cedar Ridge, over 90 days, the silence around it made everything murkier. Some media dubbed it an emotional artifact, lacking legal weight but heavy, with implication. Spencer, despite retirement, began revisiting the case file. One detail in Jamal Sutton's statement had always bothered him. Jamal had described the man in the silver truck, the large black tattoo of a bird wing on his left arm. I saw it clearly, he'd said. He touched the sign. It looked like he was trying to cover up something underneath it. Cover what, Spencer? Re-examined surveillance stills from weeks before, grainy footage of the pickup truck. In one blurred frame, he saw it, black tape wrapped around the driver's left wrist. But during questioning, Troy Delaney had no tattoo. His arm was smooth, unmarked. So, if the tattoo once existed, why remove it? And if it never did, was Jamal mistaken? Spencer pulled medical records from the prison where Troy had been held in 2012. He found it. In June 2014, Troy requested laser tattoo removal. The reason, old mark, no longer represents me. The tattoo. KP, DW. Spencer froze. DW. The initials of Dominique Wells. Was it a coincidence? Or had Dominique once known Troy, something no one had ever mentioned? Spencer dug deeper. In 2013, Dominique had volunteered for 3 months at Jos Amsterdam, a psychological rehabilitation center for ex-offenders. Among that year's roster, scrawled in sloppy handwriting, was a final name, T. Delaney. No one had ever connected them. No calls. No messages. No photos. But if they had known each other, what happened after? And Rashad, he vanished from all social media, refused calls. One friend said Rashad had crumbled under suspicion, spiraling into depression. Don't think he did anything wrong, Shidasasasab, friend said. I think he just didn't do anything, and now he hates himself for it. With that, all theories began to collapse. No one was sure who to suspect anymore, and Dominique? She remained the silent question, no closer to being answered. On day 113 since her disappearance, Alabama slipped into an odd winter, not cold, but overcast. No rain, but the ground stayed damp, like something waiting to be revealed. That Saturday afternoon, a high school student named Amina Hayes was cleaning trash from Cedar Ridge Lake as part of an environmental project. She waded into the shallow western edge near the rocks and spotted something, a coin. Not just any coin, this one had a tiny hole drilled through it, strung on a frayed cloth. Banned. The inscription, weathered and faint, don't forget me. Police were called. Beneath a nearby rock, they found a small fabric pouch, the kind Dominique had once used in nursing school. Inside, a single sheet of paper, folded 8 times. Blue ink, handwritten. I tried, but I couldn't run fast enough this time. No name. But the handwriting was confirmed to be Dominique's. No blood, no foreign DNA, no signs of struggle, just the quiet presence of something that had once been alive, once fought, and finally faded into silence. When Layla read the note, she didn't cry. She sat still, gripping the coin. I don't think she wrote that to say she gave up, she said softly. I think she wrote it to tell me she tried, right until the very end. Even the police couldn't say whether Dominique had physically been there that day or whether someone else placed the items like a message left too late. But it forced everyone to confront the possibility no one wanted to face. Dominique might be gone. No death certificate, no body, just a void so deep it couldn't be named. The case remained open, but the hope for many had closed. The community no longer looked to one suspect. They looked at each other, at the quiet between statements, at the I don't knows, at the silences from those who once swore they'd speak if they ever knew anything. Rashad never came back. Troy was never found. And Dominique, whether alive or gone now, belonged to a memory no one could reach. except the one person who knew why. She couldn't outrun it that time. Her running shoes still haven't been found. 1 year after Dominique Wells vanished, her case file remained open. No official suspects, no charges, no trial. But for many, time was no longer measured in days. It was measured in how many times they had to answer the question, did she really exist? For Layla, the answer was always yes. Every morning, she still made her coffee the way her sister liked it, half milk, no sugar, with a twist of orange peel. Dominique's old nursing cap stayed on the bookshelf where the afternoon sun would catch the faded fabric. And every year, on July 18th, Layla quietly returned to that stretch of US 80. She never spoke. She just stood there for a few minutes to feel like someone was still standing beside her. Some disappearances aren't cases. They're fractures in collective memory, places where time keeps passing but no one dares to speak the missing person's name out loud. Dominique Wells wasn't a star. She wasn't famous. She was a nurse, someone who chose to care for others instead of being seen. And because of that, her disappearance became all the easier to forget. The media moved on. The hashtag #BringDomHome, once spread across social platforms, now lived in a few scattered comments on old posts. People began to wonder if Dominique had been white, if she'd been a doctor, a private school teacher, someone with a familiar face. On the news, would she have been searched for? Harder, asked about more, believed more? No, one wanted to answer. But in that silence, those who had known her began to act. The hospital where Dominique once worked installed a small memorial in the mains hallway, no photo, no flowers, just a line etched into the wall. We never fully heal, but we never stop trying. Youth center in Montgomery, where Dominique had once taught summer health classes, renamed their reading nook Dominique's Corner. At the dedication, an 11-year-old girl, once treated by Dominique during an asthma attack, stood and said she wasn't the first adult to tell me I'd be okay, but she was the first one I believed. That was Dominique's legacy, not an ending, but the spaces she left behind, the things she touched without notice, like a ring at the bottom of a lake, a coin on a frayed string, a sentence no one heard until it was too late. Some cases are closed with paperwork, signatures, and official seals. But for Dominique Wells, the only thing left behind was something that couldn't be categorized, a presence that had no name, a feeling she was still somewhere waiting to be heard, to be believed, and to be called back by her real name. Layla once said, "We don't need to know who did it. We need to know what happened. Because if we don't, we'll spend our lives dying in little pieces." It's something few understand about the families of the missing. They don't get to grieve. They don't get to bury. There's no funeral, no closure, just the endless silence, where every moment is a blink between hope and despair. Justice in Dominique's story wasn't about courtrooms. It was about remembering her as a human being, not just a case file. And sometimes that's the hardest fight of all. In the summer of the second year, a group of students at the University of Alabama organized a panel called Unfound the Names. We haven't said. They invited Layla to speak. During the talk, one student asked, "Do you think you'll ever know what happened?" Layla paused, then said, "I'm not sure I'll ever know, but I'm sure of one thing. Someone out there knows. And when they speak, I want them to know someone was waiting to listen." That's the final message of this story. Not everyone gets their person back. Not every truth comes to light. But in a world drowning in noise, where disappearance can be forgotten in weeks, there are still those who hold the memory, so that the lost are not erased, not left alone, not silenced. Dominique Wells didn't leave behind a will, but she left behind a final message, not written on paper, but in how the people she touched kept living, with gentleness, with awareness, and with a quiet courage. Sometimes justice doesn't come in the form of answers. It comes in how we keep telling the story. So people don't forget that someone named Dominique was here, that she once ran fast, and that she left behind a light, even in the dark.